Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Book Club of California's Southern California program titled Elements of Los Angeles, Earth, Water, Fire, Air. And thank you for joining us here at Pasadena Heritage in this beautiful, historic Blinn House. I say this every time. I love having our events here. I love this space. I love the staff and the welcome that we get when we do our programs here. So thanks for being here. My name is Kevin Kosick, and I'm the Executive Director for the Book Club of California. It's my pleasure to welcome you and host this presentation tonight. For those of you that are new to the Book Club of California, and there may be one or two, but I think most of you already know us, we are a nonprofit member and donor-supported organization that is dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes we do that with a focus on the history and the literature of California and the West. The book club publishes limited edition, finely made books. We have a scholarly journal called our quarterly newsletter, and we have keepsakes for our members and guests. We host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one we're doing this evening on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, California history, and much, much more. Now, if you're not a member of the book club, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, please consider joining or rejoining our century-long tradition. Our membership dues are modest, the benefits are many, and we simply can't do the work of the book club without the support of our members. So I encourage you to go online and learn more, join, or donate at bccbooks.org. Now for our program. The title of our program is Elements of Los Angeles, Earth, Water, Fire, Air, Fire. Always messing that up. Let me do that again. Elements of Los Angeles, Earth, Water, Air, Fire. And our speaker is DJ Waldie. DJ Waldie is a cultural historian, memoirist, and translator best known for his book, Holy Land, A Suburban Memoir, which is a lyrical account of growing up in Lakewood, California in the 1950s. He has been praised for its poetic language, its insight into American culture, and its perspective on the suburban experience. He's been called one of the most respected contemporary voices on life in Southern California. Now tonight, DJ is going to talk about his latest book, Elements of Los Angeles, Earth, Water, Air, Fire, from our friends at Angel City Press. It's a meditation on Los Angeles, a place of contradictions, dreams, and disquiet. In it, our speaker considers Los Angeles as a place of both promise and disillusionment, of civic memory and strategic forgetting, of natural beauty and environmental fragility. Now, if you have questions for our speaker, we are definitely going to have time towards the end of the program, and we'll take questions and comments from the audience then. So please hold your questions till the end. Now it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium here our speaker, DJ Waldie.
Thank you, Kevin, for those very kind words, and you're welcome as well. And my thanks also to the members and supporters of the Book Club of California, whose invitation brought us together this evening. It's a pleasure to be among those who love books and what can be found in them. I'd like to express my thanks also to Kevin, your Executive Director, for his assistance in putting on this evening's event, and the staff of the Blinn House as well. Very, very warm welcome from all. My thanks also, if you don't already know them, to Editorial Director Terry Accamazo of Angel City Press and the ACP staff, represented tonight by Marketing Manager Elliot Kane, who's in the back of the room. Angel City Press is a model of how a local publisher can enrich a community that is so in need of hearing its own stories. I've been an Angel City author since 2004, thanks to the company's founders, Patty Calistro and Scott McCauley. True heroes to those of us who have tried to interpret this confounding and beautiful place. Why I'm attached to this place and find the need to interpret it needs some context. I think this quote from N. Scott Momaday, the Kiowa poet and novelist, expresses it best in referring to his work in an essay titled An American Land Ethic. He said this of his relationship to a place. He said, "Once in a life, a man ought to concentrate his mind upon the remembered earth. He ought to give himself up to a particular landscape in his experience, to look at it from many angles, so he can wander upon it and dwell upon it. He ought to imagine that he touches it with his hands at every season and listens to the sounds that are made upon it. He ought to imagine the creatures there and all the faintest motions of the wind. He ought to recollect the glare of noon and all the colors of dawn and dusk." My search for a sense of place on those terms began naturally enough at home. A few days after my birth in 1948, on a smoggy mid-September Wednesday, I was brought home to the tract house in Lakewood my parents bought in 1946. I gained habits there that were so new, my parents hardly had a language to name them. They would read the ads in the Los Angeles Times to know what they wanted. This was not a better time, nor was Lakewood a better place. Still, I wish I could hand on the charmed life that had been given me with such thoughtless abundance as a child of the suburbs. I grew up to write about that place, trying to understand what it had made of me. The initial answer was this book, a book called Holy Land, a suburban memoir, published in 1996. It's an odd book, well, about a lot of things: urban planning, hydrology and flood control, the Cold War and grief, and much else. It seems to have touched a number of hearts. Only after Holy Land was published did I realize its larger ambition to help me to find something of great importance, almost as important as a sense of self. It is a sense of place. And if a suburban sense of place can seem small and parochial, that sense of place can also be capacious, can be critical, can encompass even the presumed placelessness of Los Angeles. And when I say Los Angeles, I mean a greater Los Angeles that reaches in some form from Oxnard to Tustin and from Santa Monica to Palm Springs. I wanted to find my place in that Los Angeles, and I did, by reading its history and questioning its myths, but also by walking its neighborhoods, eating at its local joints, and being receptive to the qualities of its light and air and sound. You see, I didn't want to be in exile here, as so many of us are. I put myself in the company of the novelists, poets, and historians of Los Angeles, and also its hustlers, hucksters, and dreamers. I wanted to know what forces had brought this place into being, what misapprehensions shaped its image of itself, whose stories were told, and whose stories have been forgotten or suppressed. And what are we to make of Los Angeles near the end of another year, this year, of shocks and uncertainty? I've written 3 books of essays that seek answers to these questions. They're not guidebooks, but a series of explorations into this intersection of the past and the present of Los Angeles, connecting the personal to the public, showing dramatic change, of course, but also the continuities that still shape our future. These 3 books reach back to my immigration conflicts of 1995 and 1996, through the silent neighborhoods in COVID lockdown in 2020, and to the fiery January of 2025. In these 3 books, and across 30 years, Los Angeles changes, but it also returns again and again to moments that are different, but rhyming, as if history had an echo. Where we are now, considered Los Angeles at the start of the 21st century. It asks the question, how do we talk about Los Angeles if it's not exactly Los Angeles anymore? Becoming Los Angeles, myth, memory, and a sense of place, looks at the mythologies that shape how we interpret the city. It asks, what aspects of the past are still usable in the Los Angeles we've made? The newest book is Elements of Los Angeles. It begins with an essential fact of Los Angeles, that it's a city of second chances, a city always being reinvented, also a city always being transformed and traumatized. Elements of Los Angeles asks the question, can Angelenos see themselves as actors in their own history? The book uses the classical elements, earth, water, air, and fire, as an organizing principle. But we all know those are not fixed entities in our world. In my alchemical imagination, earth becomes water, water becomes air, and air ascends to fire. Consider, for example, the dirt under your feet. Our common ground bucks along its many faults and slides from its tectonically inclined slopes. The earth of Los Angeles continually moves, so that whole islands and ranges of hills are disappeared for convenience or profit. Deeper down there's petroleum, a word that means rock oil. Also a word that once conveyed the giddy, solid, and liquid ambiguity of Los Angeles. The ambiguity is heightened by the city's double. Beyond the green rectangles of suburban lawn is the desert, at bay but persistent, sending its hot, dry winds in autumn to jangle nerves. The Santa Ana winds are a yearly reminder that rising temperatures and changing weather patterns might, a few years from now, overwhelm the long-distance water systems that are a triumph of engineering over our thirst. There has never been enough water here. Despite the hydrological achievements of the 20th century, Angelenos live with the fear of another great thirst. In 1913, William Mulholland responded to the fear, taking a river, the aqueduct from the Owens River, and promising, he said, an inexhaustible supply of water that would drought-proof Los Angeles. Mulholland made billions of gallons of water go where Mulholland said they should, until hubris and unleashed water brought tragedy to the Santa Clara Valley in 1928. Mulholland's failure came at the point of contact of earth and water, where one element was transmuted into another. The same transmutation is in our air. At times it's painfully clear, parched desert air, and then a glaucous unbrightness drapes over Los Angeles, an off-white shroud almost palpable. At other times, the stew of hydrocarbons and diesel soot hangs in the basin's still air and renders gloriously toxic sunsets. There's more in our air, the scents of jasmine, honeysuckle, and sadly, also wildfires. And more carried on the air, the chatter of immigrant parrots, the throb of Harleys, and the ominous thrum of Santa Ana winds. The sound of Richard Wagner's Twilight of the Gods trailed the painter David Hockney as he toured friends through the Santa Monica Mountains in his candy apple red Mercedes 350 SL. Every drive in Los Angeles should have a soundtrack. As I've suggested, earth, water, and air make our home, but not fire, the transforming element in which nothing has a home. The touch of fire tumbles all the elements into chaos, searches out and renders your unproduced screenplays, your love letters, your family photos, your house, and even the lives of those to whom fire came suddenly, as it did in the first days of January in the worst siege of windstorm and wildfire in Los Angeles County history. none of us escaped. We breathed the volatile elements, the holiday decorations waiting to be taken down, the children's drawings, the walls on which they had hung, the asbestos, the hydrogen cyanide, the toxins that the flames of bedroom mattresses, living room couches, and luxury automobiles offered up to the air. When the landscape of your life is violently and randomly changed, you wonder, what will become of us? And what will become of this place? I don't have a perfect answer to those questions, perhaps only approaches to a possible answer. What I do have, what I hope to show readers in this new book, is the importance of attending to the place where you are. And here are some examples from elements of Los Angeles. When the homes of Lakewood were being built at the rate of 100 a week in 1950, the Federal Housing Administration defined them with just two words: minimal, traditional. But what was that? Well, to start with, it was studs. They're called 2x4s, only they aren't. The true 2x4 became a fraction of an inch by a fraction of an inch, today's notional 2x4. It's actually 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches, 34% less in volume. Those in the wood trade call the difference between lumber then and lumber now selling air. 2x4 studs are the vertical members of a wood frame wall. Finished, the wall is hollow, a skin of drywall over a skeleton of wood. It's a grid of absences. Electrical conduits and pipes weave through the empty spaces between the studs like lianas in a dark jungle. This sort of light stick framing built tens of thousands of tract houses in Los Angeles like mine. Exterior walls, an inch or so of stucco and chicken wire and tar paper are permeable too. Voices pass through those walls in an indistinct murmur, sometimes resolved into angry insults, sometimes into laughter. Although most of the houses on the long suburban blocks of Los Angeles keep silent. Minimal traditional was not just studs, but also doors. In the first decades of the mass-produced suburbs of Los Angeles, nearly every room had a door. A shut door is a barrier, a co-conspirator, a declaration of autonomy. Because most rooms could be shut up, many doors made these houses less expensive to heat. Sometimes a metaphor of separation is only economy. Houses have fewer doors today. Interiors in small houses look even bigger when nearly all rooms freely open into each other. An open plan house is no place for hide and seek. Where in that vigilant house is there a door behind which you might be alone and daydream? There are doors, there are studs, but there are also ghosts in those tract houses. Every house is haunted. Even the ordinary tract house of suburban Los Angeles has its ghosts. Consider furniture, particularly furniture you complete by being on it, like dining room chairs, or being in it, like an armchair. An empty chair suggests a seated figure, anticipates its presence. Houses haunt themselves. Every house is carnal, too. It makes a place for bodies, imagines a hand reaching out to a doorknob, a woman standing before it, her lover unaware within, the life they could have together until they grew old. Dust, later undisturbed on the windowsill, and now a moving van in the driveway. As the key is set in the lock by new owners for the first time, as the front door sweeps inward, the empty house conceives whole lives. The minimal traditional house, however, may be about ghosts, but it isn't about basements. The typical Los Angeles tract house, so lightly built that it likely wouldn't kill you if it collapsed in an earthquake, Doesn't have a basement. But there used to be porches. Once on deep, old-fashioned porches, families sat, a pitcher of lemonade on a table next to rocking chairs. Sweethearts courted there, screened by the blooming wisteria. Porches shrank in the eras of the bungalow, the ranch house, and the mid-century post and beam, until the garage-forward tract house of the 1970s reduced the porch to a platform hardly big enough for a welcome mat. When the remodeling of an older house swallows up its porch, something is lost. Prospective buyers stand there and sense a phantom limb. On the screen there you have Lakewood in 1953. 17,500 minimal traditional houses built all at once in less than 4 years. These minimal traditional aspects framed my sense of place as a boy, and they continue to make up the felt experience of where I am. In the suburbs, that experience begins with landscaping. The suburban yard has become an icon of unnatural nature, of nature kept at bay with pesticides and herbicides, weed whackers and ride-on mowers. But the yard isn't exempt from nature. It's actually in nature. Migrating geese pass over it. Spiders parachuting on silk threads drift through it. There are small lives in the grass, enmeshed in cycles of photosynthesis and respiration of growth and decay. A yard is a web of relationships, a zone for contacts near and globally. A coyote pauses at the end of the block. Possums, raccoons, and deer dispute the abstraction of the well-tended lawn. A hawk perches in the tree the developers of the tract planted years before. Bees rummage among the tiny white flowers of the pepper trees. That yard has a lawn in it, typically, front yard. So the characteristic landscape of Los Angeles, at least as seen from the street, is a lawn. A fenceless, thirsty commons mandated by your homeowners association. The lawn is framed by driveways and that strip of ambiguous land between the sidewalk and the curb. Possession of a lawn acknowledges limitations. It will grow out of control. Welcome weeds, decline to be green. Its habits demand habits from you. Part of a suburban life is shaped by landscaping. A lawn also is contested ground. Why it's there, as a threshold to domesticity, can be explained as a hunger for cultivated order or as conspicuous waste. A lawn is someone else's moral sign. For me, it's also, wonderfully, a gift to the street. Beyond the lawn, possibly, there's a sidewalk. Sidewalks are a suburb's foundational choice, to have or to have not. Not preserves the illusion that home is a haven indifferent to what's beyond the lawn. No sidewalk means no skateboarders, no casual strollers, fewer strangers at the door. Sidewalks mean chalked hopscotch grids, someone walking their dog, an unwanted flyer slipped into the lattice of the screen door. The liberties of a sidewalk are potent. When you step off your porch, the sidewalk might take you miles away. Sidewalks carry other risks. Over time, tree roots heave sidewalks into hazards. You have to pay attention to what's at your feet. You're in public on a sidewalk. And this one I know very well. The bike rider gains on you from behind. The concrete path is only 4 feet wide. Stay at the right edge. It's a courtesy you'll give to the uncaring cyclist who's now right behind you. And then, of course, there are dead ends, also called cul-de-sacs. Bag-ended streets are common in suburban Los Angeles. An entire tract can be a tangle of them. Their inwardness is deliberate, a reaction against the too permeable grid that was a spectacle of democracy in 1950. In a tract of cul-de-sacs, the single entrance to the tract is also the only exit. It can be barricaded by a gate and a tasteful kiosk with an armed guard inside. The wary security of a cul-de-sac neighborhood produces what are called cul-de-sac kids, imprisoned among streets that lead nowhere. Age 3 through 8, it's great. Beyond there, you're captive. That's what Jeff Speck said, he's the co-author of Suburban Nation. He told that to the LA Times. All the streets in a new cul-de-sac neighborhood have to be named, since only one of them connects to an older grid of streets already named. There are rules for street names in Los Angeles County. No name longer than 18 letters and spaces. No name too similar to another street in the same fire service area. Upbeat names connected to landscape features are popular. Arbordale, Green Meadow, Birchbrook, Lakeview. These landscapes are never actually there. And finally, there are discarded figures in the landscape of Los Angeles, settling the in-between spaces. The driver in an SUV glimpses a tent pitched next to the strip mall. Someone inside is wrapped in a blanket. And then there are more tents and more sleepers. The SUV driver feels feet slipping on a precarious middle-class rung. Life in the suburbs was once about having enough, despite the claim that suburban lives were about wanting too much. For the shelterless, suburban living means not having anything. For want of enough, there are at least 40,000 sleepers every night on the sidewalks of Los Angeles. And even the housed are too often homeless. Danny Salata wrote in Homelessness of the Soul in the Digital World, he said, "I want to go home, but lamentably, I don't know where home is anymore." My home in Lakewood is a place of the usual joys and tragedies of everyday life. A very ordinary place into which sometimes extraordinary things have access. Like, for example, the voice of Vin Scully. Others have written about it, the sports commentators and the sports historians. The fans, the older ones at least, will talk about his voice when they talk of summer and baseball. I'll talk about Vin Scully's voice too, that honeyed tenor voice. It's a June day in 1963, in the early evening, with light still in the sky, but the bedroom I share with my older brother is already filling with shadows, until the dial of the Zenith radio on top of the dresser is the only light left. On that radio, Scully is speaking in a meter and in a tone that seems to be only for my brother and me. The voice had been keener, the cadence faster, in calling games for the Brooklyn Dodgers. The voice had mellowed and came at a more relaxed pace in Los Angeles. Much has been written about radio's ability to create intimacy. And so the radio effect was part of the reason why on those June evenings, I listened with my brother until overcome by sleep, as Vin Scully's voice, often matter of fact, but at times with feeling, called the game. The consolations and the tenor murmur of that voice came with a price, but my brother and I did not know it. We knew vaguely that the Dodgers had broken Brooklyn hearts, but we believed as we drifted between the last pitch and sleep that the Dodgers would never again break other boys' hearts so deliberately. The Dodgers had come here to this almost perfect place to be with us. I read the Los Angeles Times every morning over a plate of 2 fried eggs and 2 strips of bacon, so I knew something about the team and their standing in the National League. I knew something because I read about it in Jim Murray's column in the sports pages. I read Jim Murray and Jack Smith and other columnists for the rhythms of their different voices in my mind's ear. The loyalties of a 15-year-old boy are mostly tribal, so listening to Vin Scully had a private dimension. He was Catholic, as my family was, and a graduate of Fordham College, my father's school. Hearing his voice, I imagined he was one of us. Vin Scully was talking about the weather that June evening, about the twilight gathering in the outfield, about nothing really important. That voice, with calm assurance, said that sometimes talking about nothing that important spoke something of importance into being. A voice could do that, I found as I listened. Later, I would want to do that with words on a page. Vin Scully did it better. There will be those who will remember a specific game in the voice of Vin Scully, how he called a play that changed the fortunes of a season, or how a story from the history of baseball could be extended through a succession of pitches. I'll remember some summer evenings and the radio, the dying light. I'll remember Vin Scully's voice and his music. I must admit that I'm as restless as Annie Angelino in my own limited way. Some of you may know I'm not able to drive. I've never driven a car or owned one. So I got here today by foot and train and bus and foot. But I need what Los Angeles delivers. I need to be in motion. So I'm likely to undertake some aimless wandering about, and sometimes with the connivance of a friend. One of these wanderings tried to take us to Terminal Island. We were lost. Whoops. I should put that slide up, but I forgot. It's Vin Scully. We were lost, my friend and I, trying to get to Terminal Island. The tangle of freeways that ended at stacks of shipping containers seemed designed to be disorienting. Terminal Island was to the west of us, where we wanted to go, but now we were driving east again. This wasn't the island I remember. I remember the scruffy seaside of the Long Beach port, the military bases, the shipyards of Terminal Island, and the canneries of San Pedro. That had been another island entirely. I'm from a watery family. 4 generations of us made a living at sea or fought on it in various wars. My father was one of those who fought, and in the years after he returned from the Pacific in 1945, he would drive on Sunday mornings to Terminal Island and the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles with my mother, my brother, and me. Even in those suspicious Cold War days, my father, who had a Naval Reserve card, could get us waved through the gate at the entrance to the Long Beach Naval Station to drive along the 2 miles of the Crooked Mole where smaller ships of the Pacific Fleet moored. Returning, we would occasionally give a lift to a sailor making the long walk back. Terminal Island had once been Rattlesnake Island, and in those days it was a sandbank and mud flat at the shallow end of San Pedro Bay. The mud and sand extended almost to the rocky knob called Dead Man's Island, further offshore. Rattlesnake Island was renamed Terminal Island in 1891 and served as the endpoint of the Los Angeles Terminal Railway at the Los Angeles port. Lightly settled, the island gained a resort hotel in 1999, a few cottages, and another name, Brighton Beach. The island developed a miniature grid of streets: Pilchard, Albacore, Barracuda, Terminal. The most important of these was Tuna Street and its intersection with Cannery Street. In 1913, canned tuna became a popular novelty on American dinner tables. Port operators saw a business opportunity in the apparently limitless schools of albacore, bluefin, and yellowtail tuna that swarmed in their seasonal migrations through the Catalina Channel. The men and women who worked at the canneries and the men who fished the Catalina Channel were Slavs, Croats, and Italians. But the men who fished almost exclusively for tuna were Japanese. First-generation immigrants called Issei, whose tenuous place on Terminal Island was determined by the politics of Asian exclusion. With the dredging of Fish Harbor and the construction of a mole and a wharf in 1916, the number of canneries and the size of the fishing fleet grew until Terminal Island had nearly 3,000 Japanese residents. Their neighborhood was called Higashi San Pedro, meaning East San Pedro, or sometimes called Furusato San Pedro, Furusato meaning roughly hometown. Furusato eventually had a pool hall, a bank, a Buddhist temple, a cafe, a Japanese Fishermen's Association, a Baptist church, a Shinto shrine, and a one-room school. It was, in the memory of those who grew up there, a self-sufficient community that lived and worked to the rhythm of moonless nights when the tuna ran in their thousands and cannery whistles called wives and mothers from their beds to fillet and pack the catch. All of which was erased beginning in the weeks after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in December 1941. In February 1942, with only 48 hours notice, the entire population of Furusato San Pedro was dispossessed. The Japanese were rounded up and removed to camps in the inland west. The island's homes and most of its businesses were demolished. Those who had lived and worked on Tuna Street, Japanese and non-Japanese, lost everything. Few islanders returned after the war. There was little to return to. Today, Tuna, Cannery, and Wharf Streets intersect among shipping containers and stacks of trailer chassis and loading cranes. Fish Harbor at the end of Tuna Street shelters a few boats. A cannery building sits empty, facing the wharf on Ways Street. A memorial to the Japanese fishermen of Furusato, Higashi, San Pedro is at the approach to the gates of the Terminal Island Federal Prison, whose foundation is Dead Man's Island. In my boyhood memory, much of Terminal Island was a disorienting zone of fuel storage tanks, gigantic industrial plants, set in a wasteland of oil wells and derricks. The island lived up to its name as a place of endings in those days. The stacks, massive walls really, of junked streetcars and Pacific Electric trolleys waiting to be broken up for scrap were the symbol of Terminal Island, at least for me. Today, it's the walls of shipping containers stacked 50 feet high. The culturally and economically complex Tuna Street has been reduced to the anonymous uniformity of thousands of standardized shipping containers. Without familiar landmarks, my friend and I remained lost. We never made it to Terminal Island. And just to bring to a close some of the thoughts I've been sharing with you this evening. In all my books, I make the argument that places matter. What use does its history have? How does a place become a home? I write to know where I am, to put myself in its story, to understand what it has made of me, and to negotiate my way from the personal to the political. I write about a tragic and lovely place called Los Angeles, where in fact the habits of an ordinary life can be made. I've been told that Los Angeles is gaudy but inconsequential, a place devoid of authenticity. But I have learned that it's a place just as mortal as me. And thank you.
Oh my goodness. We have some time for questions and comments. Does anybody?
Make the comments friendly, okay?
Yeah, friendly comments.
I have a very tender heart.
Does anybody? I'm curious about the images that you've selected for this presentation and the ones that appear in the book. Can you tell us about how you went about selecting them? And
well, I've been for 30 plus years, I was the public information officer for the city of Lakewood. And part of what I did for the city of Lakewood, among many other things, was develop the city's official history and updating that history through the decades. First one was in 1978, and the last one was in 2004. So I collected a lot of historical photographs that illustrate the past in Lakewood, and some contemporary photographs as well. And some of those you saw this evening. The photographs are very meaningful to me, in part because they are truth-telling documents, but also they have a complicated history themselves, and we could go into that in some detail. My book, Holding Land, talks about my conflicted relationship to photographs.
Wow. Elizabeth.
Talk to us about the image on the cover of your book.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful, wonderful find. It's an artwork by a Japanese-American Angelino artist. His name is Greg Ito. He's a 5th generation Angelino. He paints in this style, a rather flat style. And almost all of his artworks have some relationship to Los Angeles. And most of them have elements of earth, water, air, and fire in them. I saw his artwork about a year ago at a one-person show at the Long Beach Art Museum in Long Beach. And he had enormous room-spanning images, but also smaller pieces. I went to Terry Akamazo, the editorial director of Angel City Press, and suggested that we might license one of Greg Ito's paintings. And Angel City Press worked with Greg to find this image, which the designer of this book thought was appropriate. I do too. And it does show, in a kind of abstract way, earth, water, air, and fire. Kind of carries the theme of the book. But I highly recommend, look up Greg Ito online. He is extensively covered online in his various shows and the galleries that represent him. Wonderful work, all very much in his style.
Other questions? I have questions.
Please.
Well, first I have to make a comment because I found the part about the sidewalks so fascinating. Because I'm not from here, I'm not even from California, but I grew up in New York on Long Island, and we did not have sidewalks in front of our house. And I always, even as a child, thought that was weird, because downtown had sidewalks and other places, but our neighborhood did not have sidewalks. And then I kind of just forgot all about it. But it is so interesting, your take on like the import of sidewalks versus not sidewalks and what that means for a neighborhood.
And though this may seem a somewhat trivial discussion in my book, sidewalks, what are sidewalks? They have some significance, but they're not the defining feature of our lives. But writing about the ordinary, the minimal, the least regarded, the unregarded is important to me, because I think there are important truths to be found in looking at the unregarded things. There is a French philosopher whose name is Michel de Certeau, who wrote extensively about the significance of small things, and he said it's necessary to find the stories that sleep in the streets. And then there is another French philosopher, Gaston Bachelard, whose important book is The Poetics of Space. And he saw enormous value in talking about earth, water, air, and fire. So I got my marching orders from a French phenomenologist from the first half of the 20th century.
Yes.
Mr. Waldie, do you still live in Lakewood?
I live in the house my parents bought in 1946. You saw some pictures of my house with my brother and I standing in front of it. My mother and my brother standing in front of it. That's the house I still live in. Although landscaping is different, I think.
And what's the address? We'll be
Oh,
there.
you're absolutely not going to get that from me.
We're on our way. Other questions? I know everyone has this question. Maybe you don't. I do. How did you get through life without driving?
Yeah.
You told me the story about how you got here tonight, and you shared it with us, but I just can't imagine getting through life without driving.
Well, first you have to agree that I've had a life. There are those who would say I haven't had a life, or very much of one. But I've made use of the very sketchy public transit system that was available when I was a child and a young adult, and as a working man in the 1970s and 80s. I'm fortunate in living in Lakewood, which is notable for being flat. Lakewood is flat, and so it's a place for walking and riding a bike as well. But then I have to say to you, I gave up an awful lot to be a non-driver. Circumstances forced me to give up a lot as a non-driver. For example, I had to give up encounters like this that I might have had when I was 20 or 30 or 40, which might have been very enriching. But instead, as an obligatory pedestrian, there were compensations. The life on the streets as a pedestrian exposes you to a great deal of the character of a place, its conditions and qualities. I know an awful lot about light and sound out of doors. I know an awful lot about the changing seasons, as in our strange Southern California way, changing seasons that are created by the sense of changing seasons, created by subtle shifts in the quality of light, subtle shifts in the quality of the air. I'm intimately connected to a lot, intimately aware of a lot of crows. Also, as my older suburb re-wilds a little bit, I'm also familiar with hawks and skunks, which are a feature of the suburban landscape today. And so the trade-offs are these. I acquired an ability to pay attention to the ordinary stuff of life. And I think paying attention to those ordinary things is very important. Being an obligatory pedestrian gave me that opportunity. Now, I don't suggest that all of you abandon your cars and follow me onto the streets of Pasadena, which, by the way, are rather pleasant streets to walk on, which are more shade, though. But I do suggest to you that getting out of your car, getting out of that second skin of glass and plastic and sheet metal, and putting shoes or sandals to sidewalk can be a revelatory experience, and I do heartily recommend that. I must also say that all of my favorite poets were walkers. I honored William Carlos Williams and Wallace Stevens and others were walking men, and I'm a walking man too.
It must be great for your stress, for managing stress and high blood pressure. I can just imagine. I just know that that's a problem for me in driving cars.
Well, I have to tell you that throughout history, going back into the far distant past, into ancient Greece and Rome, philosophers and writers have often said that walking gave them the material of their art. And I can assure you that the rhythms of steady walking transmit through the bones of your feet and your legs into this bone up here. And something magical sometimes happens. The rhythms of walking result in the rhythms of words. And the rhythms of words have a kind of music that you can make use of, as I think I've tried to show you this evening.
You did. This has been a terrific evening. Please join me in thanking our speaker. There is copies of the book. book in the back if you haven't gotten one. I actually got one for myself because I heard a little bit about this and I wanted to read it. Now I feel like I've lived a little bit of it with this presentation, so I encourage you to check out a copy of the book in the back. Thank you for joining us this evening. Again, one more round of applause for our speaker. Such a delightful evening. For me, I loved it. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us again. We're usually here the second Wednesday of every month for a Book Club of California program. So thanks everyone for joining us. You can grab a calendar of events on your table, or you can check us out online at bccbooks.org/programs. Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and say goodbye to our speaker on your way out. Thanks.